You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get the last word.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. This is October the 16th, 2017. With you today is myself, Carl, and filling in for the always wonderful Joel, the always tiny Mike. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Boom City. Am I doing it right? Am I doing my Joel impression right?
You nailed it. Now, unfortunately, that means we have to end the show now, though.
Well, been a great show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Come find us on Twitter at The Fourth Line Podcast, at The Fourth Line. And, of course, at thefourthlinepodcast.com.
You are doing the best Joel impression, because that's not actually our Twitter handle.
I'm very committed. I'm very committed to my Joel.
You have nailed the Joel impression. You can follow us on Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast. But it is thefourthlinepodcast.com. And we were just talking. Mike reminded me of something we forgot to mention off the top of the show last time. Patreon is a great place for you to get more Fourth Line Podcast greatness. And there's been some changes over there. So if you like to get extra things, you can give us money and we'll give you them. So for a small amount of money, for a mere $2 a month, you can get our monthly barbecue article. For a mere, I think it's now at the $3, I should probably know these things, but for the $4 a month tier, you can get a bonus episode. So an extra episode comes every month. At $5 a month, we have a Twitter chat group that we talk about things. At $10 a month, it's what we call the personalized package. And what it is you get a special message on the show. We'll write you a letter. We'll record your voicemail. We'll something different every month, but that'll be something. But what makes this extra special, Mike is bringing some special, his best, and I have it on great authority because I've never eaten it, but I know someone who has. That's not Mike. He's giving me his unbiased review that Mike's, and we're not even going to say what it is. It's just great. So that comes in at the $2 a month tier. And actually, the bonus episode is $3. I told you I needed to look this stuff up. $3 a month, you get an extra episode. So we love everyone who supports us over on Patreon. Very thankful for everyone who does that. If you want more of these things, if you want cooking articles, if you want bonus episodes, head over there. And thank you very much to all of you who support us right now.
You guys are the best.
Yeah. Michael, it has been is this your first Fourth Line since we taught you about hockey?
I think so. I think I've been relegated to strictly Fifth Line ever since that. Maybe because I didn't know enough about hockey, but let's see how it goes.
Well, and you clearly have done something right, because you and Joel are co-managing a team in our fantasy hockey league. And this is your first foray into fantasy hockey. You won. And it's not like, it's not like Joel just did everything and you were a careless bystander. You were an integral part of that team.
Absolutely. I think if Joel were here, he would tell you just how thoroughly I'm carrying the team so far. Not to get too down in the weeds, but folks, we drafted Ovi with our first overall pick. That was your boy Tiny. We have Wayne Simmons, who's doing well. Again, Tiny's picks. And our first goalie taken and the namesake for the team, Martin Jones Diary, also a Tiny special. So
was the name also the Tiny special?
Oh, the name is absolutely a Tiny special. Martin Jones Diary. Joel has many, many fine points. I love that man. He's a great friend. But his knowledge of Bridget Jones' diary trivia, not up there on the list.
Lacking?
Lacking.
Yeah.
It left me somewhat wanting when I wanted to talk about Bridget Jones' diary, The Edge of Madness.
I do enjoy the fact that you were able to combine your favorite hockey team in the Sharks with your favorite movie in Bridget Jones' diary. So, very exciting for you.
Yeah, big into the Zellweger.
Yeah, absolutely. Which one of us isn't, though, to be fair? We just want to, before we get into the news of the week, we want to mention the fine folks over at the Alberta Podcast Network and ATB Financial. They are folks that support great hockey and a great establishment. So if you want to know more about them, head over to atb.com/listens, where you can find out more about ATB Financial. And now, the news of the week. That felt very Top Gear-ish. I don't know. I've never done that. It was, I liked it.
It's good.
Yeah. Clearly Top Gear knows what they're doing. We can just rip off successful show after successful show week after week.
Oh, I cannot wait for our Simpsons episode.
We'll need you back for that. I'll just bow out. You can take the lead on that. I'm not well versed in the Simpsons.
Well, that's something we're going to have to fix, Carl.
Yeah. Well, Mike, obviously this has been our first full week. Last week we had our very initial reactions. Joel and I's team are both doing incredibly well so far somehow. And this week the Avalanche did, however, lose to the Dallas Stars, looking much like the team of last year. And some might say it's the road trip factor. They were playing a back-to-back, and everyone's going to look a little worse on a back-to-back, the second game of that back-to-back. And so that was a disappointing game for me personally. But what stood out for me the most, Patrick Nemeth, a guy that was put on waivers by the Dallas Stars, claimed by the Avalanche, his first game back against the Stars, first game in Dallas since being waived, decided to drop the gloves against Mr. Tyler Seguin, of all people. A bold choice. And I think what stands out to me is just the fact, Seguin, arguably the best player on that team, certainly one of the best players in the league, and rarely dropping the gloves. And the fact that doing it against a former teammate, I don't know what exactly is there, what the telling factor is, but it's just, there's something there. It's, the former player fighting the star. It tickles me in a way, and I like it. I want there to be something there. I want there to be some sort of everyone on the Stars hates Tyler Seguin kind of controversy, and this is the tip of the iceberg. But what do you think when a guy returns to his team and there's some sort of adversity, some sort of confrontation? What does that say to you?
Oh man, I love seeing that happen because it confirms something that I just like to believe about sports in general. As fans, we feel like we're very involved. We follow social media, we watch highlights, we look at box scores, we talk to other people about the games 24/7, it seems like. Still, there is so much about what goes on in our favorite sports that we are not privy to. What happens in the locker rooms? Who's dating whose ex-girlfriend? Who still owes somebody money from a poker game that they played on a flight in between Boston and Colorado? No, these are the things that I think about. I'm not going to act like they keep me up at night, but these are the things that really interest me about sports. Not just what are we seeing out there on the ice. What are we not seeing? Yeah, so when I see Patrick and Tyler fighting like that, that very much calls to mind. There has to be something there that we haven't seen. What did Tyler do to Patrick over the course of their time together? What did Patrick tell everybody else about the sores on Tyler's lips that he saw after that one weekend in Montreal? Who knows? But those are the things that I like to think are driving a lot of the fights that we see on the ice.
Yeah. As someone who's had never mind. Yeah, there is a lot that we don't know, and everyone assumes, especially fans of the team, you assume blindly that your team gets along with each other, right? You see them on the ice, they're not yelling at each other typically, they're playing well. You might say something negative after a play, but especially in hockey where there's not a lot of no one wants to shake the boat. Those things don't happen, right? You don't typically have teammates calling each other out in the media. Those things just don't happen. So it makes me wonder what's there. And I wish that we could know what that is, but alas, we will have to wait and see. The San Jose Sharks, they're your team. They are struggling a tad to start the season. 1-3 to start the year. What's the feeling out there in San Jose? What is the concern? I guess you're not in San Jose, but you're across the ocean.
Yeah, close enough. So we're only about an hour away. The thoughts around San Jose are twofold. One, very concerning. This is a slow start. Not only are we 1-3, but we have a -6 goal differential. Excuse me. And we are just not competing against teams that we think that we should be able to, like the Islanders. So that's one of the thoughts is, what's happening? Is this team getting old? We needed to improve it. It didn't seem like we improved much over the offseason. What are we doing this season? So that's one thought. Second thought, at least we're not the Coyotes.
And that's the great thing about being in the Pacific Division. No matter who you are, unless you're the Coyotes right now, there's always someone worse than you. That division, it's doing much better than we thought. The fact that the Knights are not a tire fire is an unexpected surprise.
4-1.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about former teammates. I think the best thing to do against your former team is win. And Malcolm Subban, mere seconds away from shutting out the Boston Bruins after another waiver claim after they put him on waivers this week. I love that, especially since it's Boston, right? Anyone but Boston. And the fact that Malcolm Subban was able to, against them, Boston comes into town and he can almost shut them out. The only thing getting in his way is a puck put off his own player's skate into the net. Like, it was William Karlsson, I think, was the guy who was the skate it went off of. He owes him a steak dinner. That's what he does.
At the very least. That brings about an interesting question, though. Carl, so when we make mistakes out on the ice, how big can we go for our make good gifts to everybody else? Puck goes off your skate, bounces into the net, steak dinner. What happens if you accidentally black out during the intermission between second and third periods and drive the Zamboni out into the ice and through the boards or something like that? How big can we go with our make good gifts, Carl?
I think you need to go pretty big if you drive a Zamboni through the ice. Actually, watching the Red Wings Tampa game earlier tonight, it's not as big of an issue, but the new stadium there in Detroit clearly still working a couple bugs out. They couldn't get the goal light to turn off. That's bad.
Detroit hasn't had that problem in a long time.
No, sir. So yeah, I think that you have a myriad of things. Off your skate and in is not the best. I think you have to go bigger than steak dinner. It's not as big as made an error to ruin a perfect game, but it's pretty big.
Pretty big. Well, I can guarantee you that if I ever mess up, Carl, you're getting a little bit more than a steak dinner. You're probably getting some sort of fourth line type branded merchandise, maybe a bottle of Hank's barbecue sauce, but we'd make it work.
Yeah, well, we will get to that. We will be handing out later this show. We've got a couple interviews coming up actually, and after that, we will be handing out some fourth line podcast merchandise. So stay tuned for that. Let's just circle back. We got a little distracted from the Sharks there. They are, I'm not entirely surprised that the Sharks are doing what they are. They are a team that we saw last year. They obviously did well for themselves 2 years ago, making the Stanley Cup final. The loss of Patrick Marleau, I'm not going to say that is the factor of what's doing this, right? But they're a team that, lost some players in the offseason, didn't make a ton of moves to fill those spots, and this is what you get when that happens, right? You get just a little bit worse. And in the NHL so far this season, it's so close. The difference between first and last is some nights you can't even tell, and this is what in a salary cap league, this is what you're going to get, right? The margin for error to look embarrassed is so small that you're going to have these nights. And so, when you have all of a sudden Joe Pavelski is scoreless, Logan Couture only 1 goal, Brent Burns scoreless, these are the guys that you need to be doing things for this team. And it's not for trying. We talk this early in the season of sample size and things, right? Brent Burns, 18 pucks on net. That's not even shot attempts. That is actual shots getting through, 0 goals. Talking about he gets 1 goal. That's a 2% shooting percentage. Brent Burns is a guy with a career shooting percentage much higher than 2%. So you start to look at that and you see what this is. Last year, or I guess his career shooting percentage, 7.5%. Last year, he shot 9%. So, this is what we can look at. Even if, maybe not the 9 of last year, but 7% even. If he shoots 7%, that's 3 goals. This is, not the Sharks team that you would expect. And the numbers are there to say that they should be better than they are. So, certainly I'm not going to sit here and say they should be first in that division, but they certainly are due for, an improvement, especially after 4 games. Again, sample size so small, it is very hard to make a judgment on that. But this Sharks team is nowhere near as bad. As a whole, 5-on-5, Corsi, 7th in the league. Like, don't be looking at the Sharks and saying that they're bad. Mike, calm the fires down there in San Jose. This team is still good.
Still good, just a little slow. And like we mentioned, they've had a lot of their pieces for a long time. Patty Marleau was his first major piece to depart in quite some time. So I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe this is just a case of the old dogs just taking a little while to get going, knowing what they're capable of, and knowing what they've been able to produce, year in and year out. But like I'm saying, there is a little worry out here in Sharkyville. So I'm going to watch very interestedly.
Yeah. Well, don't you worry. I fully expect the Sharks to still finish in the playoffs. So there is a Vegas Golden Knights size playoff spot with your name on it.
Ooh, you don't think they're going to keep up the 80% winning percentage?
No. Shockingly, I don't think that's going to happen. I wish. They're a fun team to watch, but no, sadly, I do not believe that that'll happen. Let's get to some of our chats we had. We will first start with longtime friend of the show, Dan Rice, covering the New Jersey Devils. We had a nice chat with him about what's happening over there and how the Devils somehow managed to beat both the Avalanche and the Maple Leafs. So,
how in the devil did they do that?
Well, I think the devil's in the details, so let's figure out what those are.
Oh, you know what they say, it's more about the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Tell them. Cue the pixie dust. Welcome back, everyone. We are excited to have with us again. Always excited to have Dan on the show. Mr. Dan Rice, covering the New Jersey Devils for the Hockey Writers. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's been a long time.
It has been, but, we figured since your New Jersey Devils have now conquered both the Avalanche and the Maple Leafs to start the season, you're the only team that's done that so far. So we had to chat with you, had to figure out what the trick was, what the magic recipe was to besting both of our teams.
I don't want to offend anybody. The first one was probably easier than the second one. But
you mean, but by anyone you mean me, right?
Yeah, well, and I'm sure there are other Avalanche fans out there somewhere hiding in the mountains of Colorado. No, but the first game, it was the home opener. Everybody was jazzed up. All the buzz around Nico. Every time this kid touched the puck, everybody was cheering. Every time they showed him they got this huge new Jumbotron, everybody was cheering. So it was an exciting day, and I think they fed off the emotion a little bit. A lot of the players said that they had never really seen it like that, except for some of the Ranger games when it's Rangers Devils in that building, and most of the time it's 60% Ranger fans, so it's still a little loud, but it's just not loud for you. So I think that was the key to beating Colorado. They had played already one game, right? They played the 2 nights before, or I guess we'll say 36 hours before, against the Rangers. And then the Toronto game was I don't really know if I have an explanation for that. You score a 3-on-5. Shorthanded goal. You score 6 goals, and Taylor Hall doesn't have a single point. Palmieri doesn't have a point. Hischier doesn't have a point. So in that regard, that game is pretty interesting. And the Leafs had 50 shots that game. That was pretty wild. Very un-Devil-like, but this is a new era of Devils hockey. So we're not going to see 2-1 games and 20 to 25 shot totals anymore, I don't think.
Well, and let's start with that. This is not the Devils of last year, certainly. They are currently sitting in a tie for third place in the entire NHL, first place in the Eastern Conference, tied with, obviously, the Toronto Maple Leafs as one of those teams. There's a lot. We're early, right? But
the Maple Leafs.
The only people who are looking at the standings right now are those who are surprised to be there. So you've got, Colorado. We're dialed right into the standings. The Golden Knights, they're dialed right in. They're loving the fact where they are in the standings. Everyone else are like, it's early. There's still almost 80 games left in the season, but for some of us, we'll enjoy it while it lasts. And I think that's kind of the question that everyone's asking about a lot of these teams, about the Devils in particular right now. Will it last? Is this the kind of team? They are obviously incredibly different. They have Nico. They have, a healthy Taylor Hall so far. Let's knock on wood there. Yeah. You have a team that has brought a lot of young players into this team. You have a full year of longer of Pavel Zach in here. He's definitely fitting more into this team. Is this the actual Devils? Like, is this what we should be expecting? Are they as good as they look?
I'll say this is what the coaching staff expects. This is the type of team that they wanted to build. They got rid of a lot of guys in the offseason, and they're all good players in their own right, but altogether they're all kind of slower too. Camilleri, Bo Bennett, DSP. I know there's some other guys that names are eluding me right now, but the guys that they brought in are a little bit faster, and you're giving more ice time to Pavel Zacha. Will Butcher was a guy who was brought in. Sorry, Colorado fans again. But you guys got Kerfoot, so it's somewhat of a I don't want to say fair swap, but it was a swap, we'll say. But, Marcus Johansson adds a little speed to the team. Blake Coleman is a guy who made the team. He played a handful of games last year. I want to say 15 or 17. He's playing on the fourth line, and he's fast. And a guy like Brian Gibbons made the team out of camp that nobody expected. And he made the team because he's fast and he could kill penalties. And he was the 3-on-5 shorthanded scorer. And it makes the Devils management and coaches look like geniuses. But I guess the main point is whether it's sustainable. Can they do this over 82 games? The first three and a half games, they were buzzing. They were aggressive. They were pressuring teams all over the ice. And then they ran into a Caps team that was on their A game. They were coming off a tough loss to Pittsburgh, a team that really has their number. And Caps came into Jersey. They got beat twice by the Devils in preseason. And the Caps came and they brought their A game, and it wasn't close. It was Backstrom 4 points, Oshie 3 or 4 points, Ovi from the slot from his office, power play goal and a couple of assists. Holtby was on his game. But the next night the Devils rebounded and they got a win. They played a good road game in MSG and they got the goals that they needed to pull out a division win. So it's the key is whether this is sustainable. But this is the team that the Devils wanted to build, or that they had in mind when they built this team and when they started piecing it together. And getting Nico and getting Butcher helps accelerate maybe that process. Because as I wrote a couple of weeks ago, it's like you won 2 lotteries this summer, really. I mean, they were all in on Kevin Shattenkirk, and they didn't get him. And I think if they got Shattenkirk, maybe they don't sign Butcher. Maybe he signs with Vegas or Buffalo because he believes he has a better chance to play more there. So I can't downplay his impact at all, because Butcher's been 8 assists in 5 games is pretty remarkable for a young player. He is a 4-year college guy, but still a young player in this league, in a men's league.
Well, and everyone's obviously Devils fans are very excited about Will Butcher so far, and we have a lot of publicity about him, what he's done, certainly impressive, but as a defenseman, is he defensively enough for this team, or are they happy with what he's producing offensively and they say, you know what, Will, you keep playing your game, or do they want to be able to kind of help him develop the more defensive side a bit?
Yeah, that's part of it, and he's always going to be paired with an elder statesman or a more experienced defenseman, a stay-at-home kind of guy. So this way, he doesn't always have to feel he can. They want him to play his game. They want him to join the rush. They want him to make the passes. And one of the things he talked with me about, I think it was after the last preseason game, or maybe it was the first game of the season. I don't recall which one, but he said. He's a smaller guy. He's a 5'10" defenseman, and when he has to go into corners with bigger players, there's some monsters out there. These forwards now, they're 6'2", 6'3", some even taller than that, and a small guy that has to go in the corners. The coaching staff is trying to get him to think the game where he has to outsmart those players, because most times he's not going to be able to outmuscle them. So he has to take different angles maybe, and that was one of the things that he mentioned in his conference call when he made the decision to sign here, was he really clicked with Coach John Hines, and liked what the game, the style that he wanted to bring, and his style of coaching, and so far so good. We'll see if he can keep it up. Again, it's early in the season. It's 2 weeks in. We'll see what happens when we get to December and January, if he's still holding up.
Absolutely. And with some of the changes to this team and some of the speed that you mentioned, I think a lot of people are going to neglect the fact, and maybe they're not, but I think it goes to be overlooked, the quality of plays so far from Cory Schneider. He's a guy that got a lot of blame last year around the league for what he performed at, the level he performed at. And this year, it's a bit of a bounce back for him. Has anything changed with his attitude, with the way, and maybe not his attitude, it's hard for us to say that, but his mentality, is he changed anything, or is this just, the ways of goaltending, and he was kind of just due for a bounce back?
I think it's a combination of things. I think he self-admittedly had a bad year last year. And he's always a stand-up guy. He'll say, if we score 6 goals, I have to give up, no more than 5. If we score 2, I have to give up no more than 1. He's not. I'm sure he cares about his stats a little bit, but he seems like he genuinely just wants to win games and get this team to the playoffs. He maybe he's a little too hard on himself sometimes, but he did have a down season, and the defense wasn't great in front of him last year either, and that goes hand in hand. This year he looks different. Last year he was coming off of a surgery, I believe on his knee or his hip, and then they had the World Cup where he was away from the team for a couple of weeks, because maybe a week and a half, because the U.S. team got eliminated pretty quick. But the Devils have a new goalie coach this year, and Loui Melanson, a guy he knows from his time in Vancouver. They decided to bring him in, and whether they admit it or not, it has a little bit to do with their past relationship. And it's been 4 years, 5 years, maybe more than that now, right? About 5 years since he's been in Vancouver. So his game has changed and grown a little bit as he's moved on in his career. And Melanson was with another team, and I think he was with Montreal. So his his principles are basically the same from what Cory says, but it's just a different set of eyes on you and a different point of view. And he looked great in training camp. Preseason was really good. I don't think he gave up more than one or two goals in any game. And this season, he's kept the Devils in it. And the one game, like we said, the Caps really brought their A game in the one game that the Devils lost, and a couple of power play goals. You can't really fault him on them. But other than that, he's been stellar, and that's what the Devils need. They need him to be the backbone of the team, and what's everybody, I think, expects a really tough Eastern Conference this year.
Yeah, well, definitely that division is notorious for being tough, and with the Canes getting better this year, the Devils getting better this year, we've things are going to have to change. You know, the Rangers starting at 1-5. I don't think many expected that, and that's something that's due to happen in a division where everyone keeps getting better. Someone has to get worse, right?
Yeah, and you know, injuries play a big part in this too. You know, we've seen with Columbus, one year they had a really good season, and 2 seasons ago they had injuries and they missed the playoffs. Last year they won every game for like a month or whatever it was, something ridiculous. And you know, who's going to be the team this year that suffers the major injury? We see it, I think, every year, but you know, you can never predict those things. The year when Montreal had Carey Price got hurt, and they started off and they win like 15 out of the first 20 games, and then we watched them slowly as the season went on just sink through the standings, and it was like, nah, well, you know, they'll probably still finish as the wild card, and then no, they, you know, maybe. And you know, just missed the playoffs, and it was like, no, they're going to be in the lottery in like the top 5. So, you know, these things, we don't know how it's going to all break out. You hope that your key players make it through the season healthy, and the Islanders they got a little bit better, I think, in certain aspects, and the Rangers are kind of rebuilding on the fly. Pittsburgh's going to be Pittsburgh. The Caps lost a bunch of players, but you know, is maybe the pressure off of them now, and they, you know, everybody thinks the window is closed and maybe they have a better season. What are we going to get out of Philly this year? They're always a wild card. You know, they finished just missing the playoffs, and they jump up in the lottery, and they got Patrick. They got a new goalie, of course, because, you know, it's another year, so every year.
Exactly.
So we'll see what Brian Elliott does for them, and he was coming off a down year, right, last year somewhat with Calgary, and he's probably looking for another contract next year, and probably another home, because Philly's going to be looking for another goalie next year, because they always look for another goalie. But
very true.
You know, it's and as you mentioned too, Carolina, you know, they got a lot better. Have all those ex-Chicago Blackhawks on their roster now, and you know, hopefully they can recreate themselves. And it's been a while for them where they've been a significant team, and you can feel them coming the last couple of years. They've been some tough games when you play against the Canes. Guys like Skinner and Aho are always a threat when they're out there, and their defense. That's the one part for me, the defense and the goaltending with the Canes. Where are they at? Are the young guys taking that next step? Are they going to carry them? And is Darling going to be able to be the man for once, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. One last Devils question for you. Everyone, as much as they're excited about what Will Butcher has done his first time in the league, Jesper Bratt is a guy that no one knew who he was, and he has come out like gangbusters. Like, is this something that we can expect to continue? It seems like, you know, a 6th-round draft pick. Some people had him quite high in that draft. They were expecting him to go a lot higher. We're surprised he dropped so far, which, you know, I was unaware of him before this season, and certainly saw him in that Avalanche game, in the Toronto game. Continues to perform. What is Jesper Bratt? Is this something that we can say, okay, like, is he, you know, to me, it seems like a short-lived success that you certainly want to ride out, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, he was a guy, honestly, I didn't know much about. I remember they drafted him. I was at the draft in Buffalo. And before this season, before the development camp, I think it was, they had a thing on the Devils website where they asked the assistant GM, Tommy Fitzgerald, you know, give us a player to watch, somebody under the radar or whatever, and he mentioned Jesper Bratt. So then you start to pay attention to him a little bit more, and the summer goes on. We go to the prospects tournament in Buffalo with the Devils, Penguins, Bruins, and Sabres, and you want to watch this guy, and he had a great weekend. I think he played in all 3 games. I know he scored in the game that I was at against Pittsburgh's rookie players. And then he came to training camp, and he had a great camp. And again, like we alluded to earlier, finding the types of players to play the style that they want to play, that fast, attacking, aggressive style. And he's worked his tail off, to his credit. And you wonder, does he burn out? Does he, get to January, December, more games than he'll probably ever have played in the season? Is he going to be burned out then? He's a guy that I believe they've said if they do decide to send him down, he's not going back to juniors. It's going to be AHL. So I think he's a guy that probably sticks around, but they have a few players. Brian Boyle hasn't played a game yet when he comes back, and Travis Zajac. So, somewhere down the road, they have to make some moves, and he could be a guy in play if he's not performing as he has performed these first 2 weeks here.
All right. Well, and certainly you mentioned Brian Boyle, a guy that we hope is back in the lineup as soon as possible. Glad to see that he is seems to be having success so far in his fight against leukemia. So, Dan, thank you very much for joining us, talking Devils. Before we let you go, just one quick comment. We know you as our Devils guy, but you are also the number one source for NWHL and some big NWHL New Jersey Devils news. Why don't you let everyone know what has happened there in the offseason?
Yeah, the Devils have partnered with one of the 4 teams in NWHL. They were the New York Riveters. They're now the Metropolitan Riveters. They played in the Devils building, the Devils practice rink last year, and the first Isabel Cup final in 2015. 2016 was held in the Prudential Center practice rink as well. So they had a little bit of a relationship there, and basically what it means is the Devils are going to help them get a little bit more exposure. I believe the Riveters are playing there and practicing there rent-free. They get ice time to have two practices a week, and they play eight home games over 16 or 17 weeks. And the first game of the season is going to be in the actual Prudential Center as part of a doubleheader. The Devils and the Coyotes play later that night. So they kick off the season. The game can be seen on Twitter. If you just go to @NWHL, you'll see all types of links. On October 28th is opening day. And the game's at 1:30 Eastern time, and it's great for women's hockey to get a team, like an NHL team, to stand behind them and give them some support, and hopefully it's as Commissioner Ryland has said, hopefully it's the first of many dominoes throughout the league, and not just the cities that they have teams in now, but future cities down the line, like perhaps Pittsburgh or Washington, D.C., and so on and so forth.
Very exciting times for the NWHL. Something we are big fans of is making sure that league thrives, and same with the CWHL as well. We don't show favorites, but obviously there's a connection there with the Devils, and very excited to see that growing, and look forward to what it can do for both the leagues. Dan, thank you very much for coming on. You can find Dan on Twitter @DRDiablo THW. Any writings coming up that we should be watching out for?
I have something coming up maybe this week on Steven Santini with the Devils, a young defenseman playing. I guess he's not considered rookie anymore. He played about 40-something games last year. And then with the NWHL site, there's going to be tons of features as we get closer to the season. I was in Connecticut last night or yesterday afternoon and interviewed a couple of the newbies in the league. So it's nice to get around and meet some of these talented women and get to know them a little bit. And some of that stuff will be up probably in the next week or two.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously head over to Twitter @DRDiabloTHW, where you can find all of Dan's work. Thank you very much, Mr. Rice.
Anytime.
All right, thank you very much for Dan, and we will bring the pixie dust right back because as well as talking to Dan, we also talked to JD Burke over from Canucks Army about what's happening in Vancouver. Obviously, Joel is our usual Vancouver Canucks correspondent. He's not with us tonight, and so we figured let's bring JD in and see what he has to say. So, pixie dust number 2. Ooh. We are back once again. Very excited to be chatting with JD Burke, managing editor from Canucks Army and freelance contributor to Sporting News Canada and the brand new Athletic Vancouver. JD, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, early into the season, Joel, who cannot be with us tonight from the Vancouver area. And so we thought in absence of him, let's talk some Canucks hockey. Let's get into some of the season. And even though we're only 4 games in, the Canucks are already struggling with the injury bug, losing Loui Eriksson in the game against the Flames on Saturday, and Alex Edler as well, dealing with some injuries. And that seems a little more long-term. What's the timeline for Eriksson? Have they said what that is yet?
Well, we have a timeline on Alexander Edler so far, and that's about 4 to 6 weeks. He's dealing with an MCL sprain. The Canucks haven't called anybody up yet, but they've got Derek Pouliot in the waiting to get his opportunity now. Loui Eriksson, he went down with what is being described as a knee injury by the Canucks. He was driving the net, and then Tanner Glass just gave him a nice little shove into the Calgary cage, and that was it for Eriksson. He played, I think, a whopping 39 seconds from that game, and was never heard from again. Actually, he kind of came out from the dressing room, did a little lap around the ice during a TV timeout, wasn't good to go, and still waiting for an update on that. But I can't imagine his status is looking particularly good because the Canucks have already recalled center Michael Chaput from the Utica Comets.
I guess we can re-add, obviously played with them before, re-add Tanner Glass to the on the Canucks to the list of teams just disappointed in general by Tanner Glass.
Yeah. Well, he has a history with Vancouver too. You have to remember he has a bit of a nickname in town called Fanner Glass, and that goes back to, I think it was Game 6 against the Boston Bruins when Chris Tanev set him up right in the slot with a yawning cage, and Tanner Glass completely fanned on the puck. So he has a history of disappointing the city, you could say.
Well, just keeping it up. You know what to expect with Tanner Glass, and that's exactly what it is. You mentioned Derek Pouliot likely to step into the lineup for Alex Edler. That acquisition earlier this season from the Penguins. Were you pleased with what they gave up for him in that trade?
I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other with that trade. It has the potential to work out in the Canucks' favor, and it's a creative way to kind of introduce some players that kind of fit into that not quite, like the Canucks are trying to avoid a situation where their entire roster is made up of 20-year-olds. And so they're trying to find players like Brandon Sutter in the past and Eric Goodbranson and now Derek Pouliot who meet that kind of mid-20s criteria. And they're trying to accelerate the development curve of these players so that they can speed up the process of their rebuild on the fly. And certainly the acquisition of Derek Pouliot, kind of fits that mold. What they gave up for him, it wasn't a lot. It was Andre Padan, who'd obviously fallen out of favor with the organization, and a 4th-round pick. I think that Padan for Pouliot is a wash in and of itself. It's a little bit perplexing to see the Canucks part with a 4th-round pick for a 23-year-old defenseman who's yet to even break through in a third-pair role. I think that was a bit confusing for some Canucks fans, and certainly from my perspective it looked a bit odd. Especially a day after Ville Pokka cleared waivers. But at the end of the day, Travis Green has familiarity with Derek Pouliot from their time together in Portland with the Winterhawks, going back to Pouliot's junior career, and I think they've got the book on him. So it could work out for them, but there are certainly reasons to kind of raise your eyebrows at that acquisition, I would think.
Well, and as you mentioned, a 4th-round pick, to me, never something that it could turn into something it couldn't. If you can get an NHL quality player for a 4th-round pick, even if it's a third-pairing guy, if he can actually be that, to me, that's an okay get.
Yeah, certainly. I think if Benning goes into a draft and he parts with a 4th-round pick and finds himself a third-pairing defenseman, everybody calls that a victory. Where I think there might be some confusion with this deal is that they could have not spent a 4th-round pick at all and picked up a comparable, perhaps even a better player off of waivers just a day prior. And so I think for some Canucks fans, the issue here isn't parting with a fourth-round pick in a vacuum. It's that the Canucks have been bottom 5 at least in the league for I think 3 of the last 4 seasons, and they've actually parted with more draft picks than they've acquired. And so not seeing that methodology work to date only inspires continued disbelief, and I think that you see some of that, although in general this trade was well received.
Yeah, I think looking around the league and at some of the waiver claims, Canucks fans are not the only ones a little befuddled looking at Toronto. And I get the reasoning behind it, but letting Calvin Pickard go through waivers and then trading for him just the next day, there's a lot of fan bases that look at the waiver system and say, okay, what's going on there? So Travis Green, 4 games into his NHL coaching career. Are you pleased with what you've seen from him and this team so far?
It's been something of a mixed bag with Travis Green. I think he doesn't have a lot to work with, and he's trying to instill an up-tempo, high-paced offensive hockey club, and he just doesn't have the horses. And part of that is of his own doing. I mean, it took about 2 games for Brock Besser to get into the lineup, and he has the best shot on the team, period, end of discussion. Jake Virtanen has sat now for Alexander Burmistrov one of the games, and he's playing Brandon Sutter and Derek Dorsett huge minutes at even strength. So it's a bit of a combination of him not having the horses to play the system he wants to play, and him playing the wrong people to carry out that system. And I think that's kind of hurt his results so far. I think the Canucks are 1-2-1, and they're looking every bit the hockey team that everyone expected them to. On the bright side of things, he's been a lot more creative than Willie Desjardins was. You see him doing things like shortening the bench at the end of hockey games, and you see him chasing matchups and doing things that would fall under the umbrella of in-game coaching and adjustments. And for the last 3 years in Vancouver, that just hasn't been the case. It's been 1, 2, 3, 4 with the lines, and very rarely have we seen the lines shaken up in game or matchups chased. It's just been a running rotation of players. So there are some encouraging things there, and there's certainly enough to make you wonder what he could do if there was some actual talent on this team. But results are mixed early. It's a little bit too early to tell one way or the other with Green.
Well, and with the difference in roster makeup versus desired play style, do you expect him to change his play style that he's asking for the team, or hoping that Benning brings in some more guys throughout the course of the year, whether it be, calling some guys up from the minors and seeing how they can fit into those roles, or just kind of play out the stretch, get this team learning his system so that for next year when move some other players out, bring in some new guys that more fit his system? Which kind of approach do you see them taking?
Well, that's a tough one, because I don't really have much of a historical precedent to go off of with Travis Green. Of course, he's been coaching the Utica Comets for the last, I think, 4 or 5 seasons, but speaking honestly, that's not a team I followed very in-depth. Certainly not last season, so it's hard to say what kind of adjustments he's going to make or he's going to ask the people of him to make. I think what's going to have to happen is there's going to have to be a meeting of the minds somewhere in the middle. It might be as simple as the Canucks calling up players like Nikolai Goldobin later in the year, but they have to create openings first. So they're kind of in a holding pattern in that sense, because they don't have the roster spots to create space for some of their younger players who might be able to play Travis Green's systems. So I think for right now, they've just got to ride it out. And perhaps it falls on the coach a little bit more than it does the general manager, at least for the first few months, whether that's fair or otherwise.
So looking at the Canucks, you mentioned that this is kind of as expected, 1-2-1 to start the season. For someone looking at the Canucks roster, what kind of hope is there for outsiders who don't really follow the Canucks super well? What kind of hope is there into the future? Some young guys that you could say, these are the guys to watch. They might not be ready this year. They might not be ready, at the early start of this year, but who should we be watching for with the Canucks?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer, which is problematic in and of itself. I think a team that's been as bad as the Canucks have for as long as the Canucks have should have a far better prospect pool than they do. Speaking about the players they do have, though, it's getting better. And certainly at their last draft, they put in some work to really improve upon their prospect pool and make sure that they do start to develop a system that is worth getting excited about, if not in the short term, the long term. I think at the top of the list has to be Brock Besser. He's an immediate ticket draw for fans this year, and just looking at some of what he's done with his scoring in college and what he's done in his short NHL career, there are signs there that Brock Besser can develop into a 30-plus goal scorer for this club for many years to come, and I think that's worth getting excited about. And just looking at the Canucks' shifting philosophy, I think we saw last draft that they're not looking to acquire big, plotting, slow players, conservative picks. They take Elias Pettersson, 5th overall in the draft, and he's wiry, but he's tall, and he can play the center position. He's a great playmaking center, just a high-octane offensive player, and he might be a bit further out from the NHL just because he has to develop physically, but when he gets there, he's going to be bringing a lot of offensive talent with him. So I think those are the two players that you have to get most excited for as a Canuck. I would still say that Olli Juolevi has potential to develop into a special defenseman. I know that's going to be a hard sell around Vancouver, where he just put together a very, very poor training camp. But just going back to the player I saw last year with London, I really think he has the potential to develop into a top pair defender who can really control play and just dominate the shot share. So a little bit more understated, but I mean, you can't understate the value of a first pairing defenseman. So there are some pieces in place, and certainly the starts of some of their second round picks as well. Players like Cole Lind and Jonah Gadjevich are really encouraging. So there's some pieces on the way.
Well, and yeah, with the, you mentioned the draft, picking Elias Pettersson 5th overall this past year. I know a fair amount of people were fairly interested in that pick, mostly in that the pickup of Jonathan Dahlen from the Senators in the Alex Burrows trade. To me, that kind of stands out as a move, bringing in a couple guys who have some experience, and maybe it's trying to harken back to, obviously you're never going to get the kind of connection you had with the Sedins, but trying to help people who, they've played together in Swedish national teams in the past, and just trying to get that kind of connection built with some of these young guys.
Yeah, and that was a point that Jim Benning made at the draft when I asked him about taking Elias Pettersson, about the connection between him and Jonathan Dahlen. And certainly it played a role in the Canucks drafting Dahlen and trading Pettersson and trading for Dahlen. The two played together for Timrå last year in the Allsvenskan, enjoyed some great success playing against men. And Jonathan Dahlen for Burrows, that was a really great trade for Canucks fans, specifically because it showed for the first time, if only for a brief moment, that this club was willing to embark on a full-out rebuild. I think that was the first move that signaled there might be a change in philosophy. And when you think about it, the Canucks were pretty close to buying out Burrows a couple of years ago. It was looking like it might go in that direction, and that they could return that player to their lineup and restore his value to the point where they could get such a highly touted prospect. That was a big moment for the franchise, and one that they hope is going to pay off sooner than later. Right now, the biggest issue with Jonathan Dahlen is that he contracted mono right ahead of training camp. And so the original plan was that if Dahlen showed he was close to NHL ready in training camp, they were going to let him play out in Utica, with the idea being that as injuries occurred, as trades happened, they might be able to create a spot for him near the end of the season. And unfortunately, because of mono, he can't even find a home on a SHL team this year. He tried to go back and reconnect with Linkoping, and even there was an attempt to get him to play with Pettersson at Vaxio, but neither team was willing to take him on. I think they just didn't want to take on that risk of having to develop a player in a men's league. So he's had to go back to Timrå of the Allsvenskan, and it might be an extra year before Canucks fans see Dahlen as a result.
Well, looking ahead, you mentioned the potential of guys being traded out. There's rumors surrounding a number of players of this team. We continually see, of varying degrees of rumors, but, Chris Tanev's name gets bandied about, and the conversation in the offseason, which, they kind of shut it down, of the Sedins moving out. Is there anyone from this roster that people could hope, hey, maybe my team could trade for this guy come trade deadline? Who are you looking at as guys that are going to be moved out of here?
Well, at the top of the list, I think it's Erik Gudbranson. Erik Gudbranson was somebody the Canucks acquired for Jared McCann, Rasmus Asplund, and Jonathan Ang. Rather, McCann and the picks that became those two players. And it hasn't worked out. Last year, Gudbranson comes to camp with a wrist injury that requires surgery. His season is cut short by December, and that was it. So they signed him to a one-year show-me deal at $3.5 million instead of the rumored $5 million he was chasing on a long-term deal. And the hope was that he was going to take on a much larger role with the Canucks this season, playing with Travis Green. And the exact opposite has happened. If you look at Saturday night's game against the Calgary Flames, Erik Gudbranson, I think he played the fewest minutes of any defenseman. And so they're kind of at a crossroads here with Gudbranson, where he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and they have to decide whether they're going to stare him down on a long-term extension and pay big bucks at that to keep him, or if they cut bait with a player who's already starting to get marginalized by a new coach and somebody who should hold reasonable trade value. I think the Canucks tried to move Gudbranson in the summer to the Florida Panthers, but Jason Demers nixed that trade with his no trade protection. So, yeah, I think we're looking at a situation where Erik Gudbranson's going to be on his way out. The way the Canucks are using Thomas Vanek with the Sedins on their top line, they might be trying to build up his trade value so that Thomas Vanek can be a trade chip for them at the deadline. He signed for a very affordable $2 million on just a one-year deal, and he's looked decent as a Canuck. So it's entirely possible that he could retain some value at the deadline. Beyond that, there aren't a lot of pieces that I would expect to move. Jim Benning does not want to part with Chris Tanev. The Sedins, it would be difficult for the Canucks to trade them because they retained salary on the Jannik Hansen trade for Nikolai Goldobin last year, and they're already retaining salary on the Roberto Luongo deal. That leaves them with just one remaining retained salary transaction. You combine the Sedin's salaries, that's $14 million. It's a lot to expect a team to take on. So I don't know if it makes sense logistically speaking for another team to pick up the Sedin twins, much less the Canucks' ability to make it a reality.
Well, definitely. That cap hit's going to make it difficult. And but the Vanek deal, I think when they sign that, and especially seeing them put him with the Sedins, definitely signals, highlight him to move him, which is always good. That then maybe they can fix that draft pick deficit they put themselves in. So
Canucks fans would love that.
Absolutely. Well, JD, thank you very much for joining us. Why don't you let everyone out there know where they can find some of your work?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at @JDylanBurke. Dylan spelled like Bob Dylan, Dylan. You can find me on Sporting News Canada, where I am the Vancouver Canucks reporter and freelancer. I'm also going to be joining The Athletic. I've yet to write my first post for them, but barring anything significant, that should be coming down the pipeline this week. I'm also the managing editor of Canucks Army and the co-host of Canucks Army Radio on TSN 1040 every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m.
Definitely. So if you are looking for more Vancouver Canucks stuff, make sure to follow JD and just learn everything that you can about the Canucks. Lots of great places that he has his work, and stay tuned for that. JD, thank you again for joining us, and good luck the rest of the season.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to JD for coming on the show. Mike, this is a night full of me making mistakes and having to cut them out of the show. So I'm very thankful that you're here to keep me in line.
Yeah, I can't believe you just let off that diatribe of swear words like that. It's just very unlike you, Carl.
Yeah, well, you know what? If Joel Had it just shown up, I wouldn't have to say those things about him.
Yeah, well, he had it coming. He knows why.
Exactly. You know what you've done, Joel.
You know what you did, Joel.
Yeah. All right, Mike, let's head to the wonderful world of high sticking. And as we mentioned on last week's show, we're fixing something that we made a mistake about before. Previously, we had said that we would hand out a puck. The first ever Fourth Line podcast mini puck would be sent out to someone. We never got to that. So we had a truncated sticking. And here's the thing. Joel's not here, so he doesn't have a say in what we do. It's down to me and you. We're kangaroo recording this. We could call it the kangaroo court. There was a tie.
What?
What do we do?
We've never had this before.
Do we go with who had the most game-winning goals and not assists? Do we just give them both something? Mike, what happens?
No. So I am not one for the participation trophy. I don't like giving out prizes to everyone. So we have to come up with some way to choose between these two tied people. So I would be in favor of whoever had. Carl, I'll tell you this way. I'm in favor of whoever had the player who scored the least amount of points this season, because that means they had to have some insight, something that they felt they had a hunch on to choose that player. I'm not going to choose Ovechkin and have you say, oh, that's a great choice, way under the radar. You're really putting a lot of thought there, Tiny. So, who were the players that these guys chose, and is there anyone who made like a little bit of a sneakier pick?
Here is the problem with that. That would require a lot of effort. Like, maybe if we had have done some show prep and had talked about this and said, you know what, here's what we're going to do, Mike. However, I did not, in the absence of doing things to the full, I just wrote down how many points people got something. I didn't write down their picks. So we don't have that option. But I can tell you, no, we didn't put the Sharks in high sticking this week because we knew they would just lose all the games. No one wants to watch that.
Seriously.
All the Sharks games are coming up in high sticking, not tonight. So you like it when someone puts forth, like, has the effort, the research. Obviously, everyone in high, this was an incredibly close. The top four were separated by 1 point. There was a two-way tie for first, and then I guess right below them, 1 point back was two more. So a very tight collection of teams. I will tell you that one of the individuals started incredibly hot. Got the first three. I held up 4 fingers, but it's actually 3. Got the first 3 games correct. And then the other individual mounted the comeback and was just, determined, dogged effort, game after game, putting in the long hours. Which kind of individual stands out more to you?
So I am a big fan of the comeback, and mostly because I'm the other guy. I'm the guy who puts in the work, like at the very beginning, and I kick my heels up and take it a little bit lazy. I hate that about myself, so I don't want to reward my worst behavior. So I'd like to focus in on the guy who saw himself not starting out so hot, put in the work, did a little bit of research, and had some great guesses to drag himself out of that hole. That's what I like.
All right. Is that who we're going to give it to then?
That's who we're going to give it to.
All right. Congratulations to Brandon.
I didn't realize it was Brandon. No, I take it back.
Here's what's great, though, is in giving this to Brandon, it's like a consolation prize because I beat him in our 4th/5th line fantasy football league this week. So congratulations on winning high sticking, Brandon. You can find him at bsharecohen on Twitter. And thank you for the victory against your super terrible fantasy football team.
Great at high stick fantasy football. A little bit to be desired.
Yeah, a little lacking. So congrats. Alex Watson, writer for the website, finished in a tie for first. We know Alex will be back. Brandon, you, sir, are the winner of the very first ever Fourth Line podcast, Puck. So congratulations. And Mike, this is now an exciting time for you. Do you have the NHL schedule pulled up?
I do.
Okay, that's great because we are picking your first ever high sticking games And because this is your first time, we're going to let you go first. Who is your first Pavel Bure must-watch game of the night?
Ooh, let's see. So, obviously for tonight, there's only one. So that's not going to be what I go for. But looking
well, and especially since that game's already almost done, I don't think I can guarantee you I'm not going to get this episode edited before that game's over. So
fair enough. So I definitely say that of the games looking forward, I love that Leafs versus Capitals game tomorrow. As we said, I've got a lot riding on Ovi this year. Joel is obviously a Leafs fanatic, and who doesn't love a little Austin Matthews in their lives? So I would definitely identify that Leafs versus Caps game as the one that I keep an eye on for the rest of the week. And then beyond that, I don't know, Carl. I mean, I'm looking at Oilers versus Chicago. I want to see Connor McDavid do well, and Chicago obviously has the hottest hand in the league right now. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But I'm not sure. What are you seeing?
All right. So for tomorrow, our pick: Toronto versus Washington. On Wednesday, my pick: Chicago St. Louis.
There we go.
Which gives you Thursday. I just went Chicago St. Louis. Do we want to go back to back Chicago?
No,
or do we want to have my Carolina Hurricanes next door to me playing the Calgary Flames, losing to the Calgary Flames? Unfortunately, I made great plans to go to that game. I'm now at least quadruple booked for that night. I have made a terrible mistake. So I will not be at that game as I had previously intended. However, I vote we make that our high sticking.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right. Carolina Calgary is the next game. Mike, you get to pick the next day. What is your pick on October the 20th?
Well, apparently I'm a masochist who also wants to punish all of our listeners. Let's go with San Jose versus New Jersey. Let's take those Sharks versus the Devils.
All right, let's do it. A road trip, a nice little cross-country road. I almost said cross-Canada. They're probably not going across Canada. That would be quite the detour. Just the Sharks head from San Jose, fly to Vancouver, head across to Montreal and down. Just stop in for some poutine on the way. Why not, right?
Yeah, I heard Manitoba is just great driving country this time of year.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, they're doing the drive. Good for them. Bold. I like it. In honor of you, do we want to do the rare back-to-back same team? The Sharks heading into the terrible arena that is whatever they're calling it in Brooklyn?
Let's do it. Let's punish everybody.
All right. You get back-to-back Sharks games this week. Enjoy that. They're going to be clamoring for us to never have you on the show ever again.
I am so sorry.
All right. Sunday, there is only one game for us to choose from. And as much as you're sorry for picking the Sharks games, the Vancouver Canucks versus Detroit Red Wings is the only game available on Sunday night. So enjoy that. And then it brings us to Monday, a day where both your Sharks and Joel's Leafs are on. Your Sharks have already been up twice this week.
Yeah, I think it makes a pretty clear decision on who to pick for Monday. San Jose versus the Rangers. Lock it. Oh, wait, no. Los Angeles Kings at Toronto. That's a great change of pace. Let's lock that one in.
What is it with the entire state of California heading out east this week? Because that game is in Toronto. The Sharks, obviously, with their Islanders, Rangers, whichever other team they're playing in high sticking this week. The Devils, they're just hanging out in the New York area. The Kings, what's happening in California that everyone's fleeing?
So I think just the NHL in California is being very considerate right now. Seeing as the NBA season is about to start, I think they're just giving us a little breathing space, letting us get that out of our system, and then coming back next week once we've settled down a little bit and are going to be better hockey fans.
Okay, well, that's nice of them. Congratulations right now. Do you have a prediction of how many games your Warriors will win on the road to their inevitable finals rematch against the Cavs?
I very much cringe at you saying that it's inevitable. That almost curses them to not be able to follow through. But if I had to select, if I had to be bold, a lot of people expect the Warriors to regress a little bit this year. They're, the Vegas over and under is about 67.5 games. They've won 67, 73, and 67 in the past 3 years. I'm going to go bold. I think they're going to break the regular season win total again and win 75 games this year. 75 out of 82, 75-7. What a record that would be, Carl.
So you claim that I'm cursing them, and then you say immediately after 75-7 is the record. This does not rest on me. This is 100% on you, sir.
Oh no! If it doesn't come through, I'm holding you personally responsible.
Well, congratulations on your 67-15 record this year.
You jerk!
I love that. That's how high you are. Like 67-15 is an incredibly impressive season, and you are offended.
I am offended that you give me a top 10 finish all time.
Yeah, no doubt. This is the kind of things that he has. No wonder. You know what? I'm not even sad the Sharks are terrible right now.
Whoa. Well, now you just sound like Joel and my mom. Two separate people.
Right, Joel. I was confused for a second. Yeah, Mrs. Tiny, a lot hairier than I thought she was.
Much bigger beard than you would guess.
Yeah. I guess I know where you get it from then. It's from her side.
No. Mom, I'm so sorry if you're listening.
Well, to all of you, if Mike's mom and the rest of you want to find us on Twitter to play high sticking, you can do that at Fourth Line Podcast, at Fourth Line Podcast. You can find more about us at thefourthlinepodcast.com. Alex had an article up there this week about the Vegas Golden Knights hot start and what we can expect from them. Patreon.com/thefourthlinepodcast. Patreon.com/fourthlinepodcast. As we mentioned off the top, you can head over there and find all of those things as well. Mike, I want to let you know about a great show. We've talked about all the great shows at the Alberta Podcast Network. Here's one that will not let you down. Like a certain group of male soccer players we know, the Four Kicks podcast covers women's soccer, specifically focusing on women's soccer in Canada and the Canadian women's national team. Shout out to the U.S. women's national team for being qualified for the World Cup, unlike the men. Can't win them all. Sometimes you can't even win against Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, they were Trinidad. So shout out to Four Kicks Podcast. You can find them on Twitter at Four Kicks Podcast. It almost makes sense.
Almost makes sense. Give Jessica and Katie a listen. You are not going to regret it.
Not in the slightest. So head over there. Head over to ours. Play some high sticking. Thank you very much for filling in for Joel this week, Mike. We will see you on the next episode of The Fifth Line, where we will talk about who knows what.
Probably pick another song that nobody else listens to and spend a solid 45 minutes on it.
Yeah, it'll be... Oh, I had a song stuck in my head earlier. I almost serenaded you with it at the open. But it got... when it comes back to me, because literally, like, I was singing it, you showed up, I got distracted. Next time, who knows what will... I don't know, Total Eclipse of the Heart?
Oh.
Yeah. Another deep dive coming soon for you at The Fifth Line. So, thank you very much, Mike. Thanks again to Dan and JD for joining us.
Boom City.